What if you could look up at the night sky and know for sure that a part of someone you love is orbiting right above you? Well, today we're going to dive into how one startup is making that a reality. They're taking memorials to the final frontier, combining some seriously impressive space engineering with the deeply personal act of remembrance. And it all starts with this feeling right here. This quote from the founder, Ryan Mitchell, it just captures something I think we all recognize. That feeling of what now, after a memorial service is over. For him, that fleeting moment wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of an idea for a whole new way to remember. All right, so here's our roadmap. We'll start with that spark of inspiration. Then we'll dig into how they're making space so incredibly affordable. After that, we'll look at the tech, what the experience is actually like, and finally, we'll talk about what this all means for the future of remembrance. So, who even thinks, you know what, we could do this in orbit? Well, you're about to meet Ryan Mitchell, an engineer who has literally spent his entire career sending things to the stars. Mitchell's background is frankly incredible. He's a manufacturing engineer who cut his teeth on NASA's space shuttle program. Then he spent nearly a decade at Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos' space company. So he had a front row seat watching companies like SpaceX just completely change the game, slashing the cost to get to orbit and making the stars feel, as he said, closer than ever. So that big aha moment for him happened during a family member's ash spreading ceremony. He just felt the whole thing was over way too fast, and he asked that classic innovator's question, how could this be better? His answer? He combined that deeply personal experience with his professional expertise in spaceflight. Now, you might be thinking, wait a minute, sending ashes to space, isn't that already a thing? And you're right, it's been done since the 90s. But what's totally new here is the mission, making it accessible to everyone, not just a select few who can afford it. And this is where the real disruption is. A service that typically costs thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars, is now being offered for just a couple $100. That's not just a small improvement, that's a whole new ballgame for the entire industry.
Let's just focus on that number for a second. $249. That price point literally transforms this from a niche, luxury service into something thousands of families could actually genuinely consider. It makes it a real option for a meaningful and totally unique memorial.
So how on earth is that even possible? Well, it's a combination of a few really smart moves. First, the rideshare model. They are basically just hitching a ride, buying a small spot on a big SpaceX rocket. Second, the company is self-funded or bootstrapped, so they don't have investors breathing down their neck demanding huge returns. And third, it's really mission-driven. Mitchell himself has said he's not trying to make $1 billion from this. Okay, a low price is fantastic, but it's gotta work, right? So let's look at the actual hardware, the tech that makes this whole journey to orbit possible for up to 1,000 different people on a single launch. The key piece of hardware here is something called a CubeSat. The easiest way to think of it is like a tiny standardized satellite, kind of like a small box. Because they're small and light, you can pack a bunch of them onto a single rocket launch, which is exactly what makes that whole rideshare model so incredibly effective and affordable. For the families, the whole process is designed to be super simple. You send a really small, symbolic sample of ashes. We're talking about 1 gram. Those samples are carefully placed inside the CubeSat, which then gets loaded onto a Falcon 9 rocket. And then it's launch day. And get this isn't just some far-off theoretical idea. The launch agreement is already signed. The very first memorial mission is officially on the books, scheduled to fly in October of 2027. It's happening. But the tech is really only half the story. After the launch, after all the engineering, what does this actually feel like for a family? Let's talk about the memorial experience itself. So the satellite will be orbiting the Earth for about 5 years, way up there at an altitude of 550 kilometers. And it's in what's called a sun-synchronous orbit. Now that's a key detail because it basically means that over time, the satellite will pass over the entire globe. It makes it a truly global memorial. And all of this is what really turns it into a living tribute. Families will be able to track the satellite to know exactly when it's passing over their house. Then, after about 5 years, it re-enters the atmosphere in a final, fiery tribute, like a shooting star. And since only 1 gram is sent up, families still have the rest of the ashes for any other memorials they might want. Now, here's a really, really important technical detail. The ashes are never actually spread in space. They stay safely contained inside the CubeSat for the whole mission. Spreading them would create space debris, which Mitchell calls a nightmare scenario. So this is an incredibly responsible, carefully engineered approach. All right, so let's zoom out. What does this all really mean? We're seeing more than just a clever business model here. We're seeing technology intersect with one of our oldest, most deeply human rituals, how we remember the people we've lost.
And I just love this quote from Mitchell. It shows you that this idea became a real obsession for him, born from a genuine belief that he could create something more meaningful. Apparently, even when he tried to talk himself out of it, the engineering and the business case just kept making perfect sense.
And that really leaves us with a fascinating question to ponder, doesn't it? As the cosmos becomes more and more like our own backyard, how is it going to change something as personal, as profound as the way we say goodbye?